Welcome to Authors Alcove for Fantasy Writers. So sorry about the awkward start. I'm just trying to get figured out doing lives through this particular program. But anyway, if you're not familiar with us, we're Authors Alcove for Fantasy Writers, where we explore the boundless realms of imagination, dive into the intricacies of storytelling, and connect with the authors who craft the magical worlds we love. Had to be a little cheesy there. I am your host, Agnes Wolfe, and today we're delving into the fascinating world of urban fantasy supernatural storytelling with a guest who has mastered the art of world building, Avily Jerome. Avily is the author of The Breeding and more than a dozen other supernatural and urban fantasy books. She's also a freelance editor and mentor, helping writers shape their... Oh, just one moment. I have a little background there. She's a freelance editor, and she also mentors helping writers shape their stories and navigate the publishing world. And she's also a very proud pantser. I'm going to ask her about that, being somebody who's more of a plotter. So Avily, welcome today.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. And thank you all for tolerating my very awkward start at the beginning. But anyway, so I wanted to go right into the question about the pantser. You said that you're an unrepentant pantser. How does this approach influence your world building? And do you develop any aspects of your setting ahead of time, or do you just let it evolve as you start writing?
A little bit of everything depending on the story. There are like the world that the breeding is in. It started out because I had read a bunch of books. I wouldn't call it research, unofficial research, just on like demons and alternate realities. And, so it was something that I was interested in at the time. And so I kind of built that world based on some of those books that I had read. And actually, that first scene is the first one that came into my mind. Like sometimes I have an idea of where I want it to go. And so it starts in a different place. But in this one, that first scene was the first one that I had in mind, and the whole story evolved from there. But so this one was based on loose, unofficial research that I had done into like paranormal activities and that sort of thing. Um, others, I kind of know more where I want it to go, and so I do the research based on that. Like my book Swimmer is an Little Mermaid inspired urban fantasy, and so I just did a lot of research into various mermaid myths. So I tied in kind of some classic mermaids, a little bit of Disney, a little bit of sirens, a little bit of Greek mythology, so I just kind of compiled a whole bunch of different uh, lore and created my own world with that. So it depends a lot on what the story is and what it needs, how I build my world out from there.
So you mentioned, because like I live literally 20 minutes from Jerome, Arizona. If you guys have never heard it, it's a ghost city. It's from a minor city, and it's supposedly haunted. You should try out the haunted hamburger, but you're familiar with that. And I was excited because, your last name is Jerome. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. But I wanted to ask about your supernatural elements. So your book blends paranormal and supernatural themes with deep character development. How do you ensure that the world building doesn't overshadow the actual characters themselves?
A lot of my world building and the process is like the character doesn't know anything about the world. Like she kind of gets thrust into this world uh, accidentally. So a lot of my world building is her discovering it as she goes along. So that's kind of it's a first person POV. So it's a lot of her experiencing everything as she goes along, as she discovers one new thing after another, as she kind of figures out how the world works, figures out how the portals and the dimensions work and that sort of thing. So since it's her experience, it's not there's not a lot of room for like info dumping because it's just her figuring things out one thing at a time. So that's kind of the approach that I use in a lot of them is just kind of the character experiencing it as they go along.
So I've read the first three chapters because I just got it last night, so I was not able to prepare completely for it. But I do have to say it starts out very intriguing because I believe she's in a therapist office and she's hearing a voice and seeing eyes. So it's definitely very intriguing. I can't wait to finish it. I only got to the third chapter. I was too tired last night and we started too early this morning. So, all right. So urban fantasy often walks a fine line between grounded in reality and magical unknown. I'm more of an epic fantasy writer. So how do you create a setting that's both realistic, but also in the fantastical world?
That is uh I the how to. Okay, I don't know how. I just kind of like this the breeding takes place in Phoenix, which is where I live. And so there's a lot of the familiarity with I try to be a little bit vague because I don't want somebody to drive past somebody's house and be like, that's the house, you know. So, you know, and I don't have necessarily a specific house. I just kind of have a generality like, oh, this area of Scottsdale where all the rich people live, and you know, this area of downtown where the warehouses are, and you know, so I'm kind of vague, but also specific enough that it's like, oh, I know where that is. I know that city. So I start with a firm kind of base in what I am familiar with in the reality of this city, and then I can like add the layers. Like in this one, it portal to the other dimension. So the other dimension kind of layers on top of ours. So when she's in the other dimension, she can kind of see and sense our dimension. But then the demon realm is a very different kind of world. So it's kind of layering, much like the dimensions, layering the supernatural on top of the reality. So the reality is similar, and I understand it because I live here and I know how this works. But then the supernatural is kind of like an added element and uh, a thicker paintbrush on top of what's already there.
So you actually have both the magical setting and the natural setting. Is that correct?
Yes,
It's a portal
like
fantasy.
sort of.
Okay, sort of, yes. So, how does your magic work in that? Are the dimensions completely separate, or does the magic leak? Obviously, leaks a little bit into this world.
Right. So the magic is less magical and more supernatural. So the kind of slight spoiler, the demons are trying to take over the human world. Hopefully that's not too spoilery. It should be
I don't
somewhat
think so,
obvious, I
because
think.
I kind of figured that in the first three. I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
one wants to take over the world. Okay, that's not spoiling.
Okay. So they reside in their dimension, but they have access to ours. So they can essentially come and go as they please. And then but the more portals that they are opening, the more their reality is bleeding into ours. And so the magic is like they have super strength, superpowers in their dimension. They are super fast and super powerful. When they are in our dimension, they take on human form, so they are stronger and faster, but they're not, you know, superpowered demons per se when they're in our reality. And then my main character, when she is in the other dimension, she is able to kind of access some of those abilities, and that actually is spoilers because I kind of tell how she does it later. But she does have some some access so that when she's in that dimension, she kind of has some superpowers to an extent to where she's kind of on par and can fight the demons.
So I have to admit, like, that's the type of movie or in shows I like. Like, I love those sort of that have the demons and all of that, like Supernatural or Buffy the Vampire
I love
Slayer.
Buffy. Love Buffy.
What movie or book would you say your book is most like?
Definitely Buffy and Supernatural are very similar genres. The Dresden Files for books are uh, very, very similar genre-wise. So my go-to comp title is Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. So, and that's a whole series.
So I wanted to ask also, because you have some unique hobbies, like trolling scammers, which thank you very much. I appreciate that one. Um,
Good times.
I also noticed that you dress as a pirate. I've seen a few of
Yes.
your things, and I absolutely love all of your, like, I was looking through pictures trying to decide like what I was going to use as like the picture for your thing, and I'm like, this is so fun. Um, but you also sword fight. How did you get into sword
Yes.
fighting?
Accidentally. So I was at a convention, a local convention, on author panels and stuff. And one of the other groups there was a historical reenactment. It's a nonprofit that does the golden age of piracy. They teach about sword fighting and the history and piracy and everything like that. And so they were doing a demonstration, and so I was like between things, between like my panel and then I had a signing right after that. But so in between things, they were doing a demonstration in the courtyard. So I'm sitting out there watching them do this demonstration. I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. And then the leader of the group says, "Does anybody want to try?" And I'm like, "Yes, please, let me try." So I'm wearing this. I think I have pictures online somewhere, but I'm wearing this like full steampunk costume, like with the corset and the wide giant hoop skirt. And so they put a mask on my head, and the mask was sweaty because the guy who was using it before, so it's gross and sweaty. And he handed me a sword, and he's like, "Here." And so then, and then he got really excited because I'm left-handed, and lefties are um, they're fun to train, he says, because people aren't used to it. So it makes it most right-handed fighters are not used to fighting lefties, and so there's an advantage if that's your dominant hand. So I do the demonstration, and I'm like he's showing me a couple things, and then like I'm like I have to go because I have to go in for my book signing, but thank you. And he looks at me and he says, "Do you want to be a pirate?" And I was like, "Kinda, yeah." So so then it turns out one of the other authors who was at this convention is the is his fiance at the time, now wife. So found out that there was like this other lady that I had been on panels with was connected to this group also, and so just kind of joined. Like I texted my husband like, "Can I be a pirate?" And he's like, "I guess." So yeah, so that was 6 years ago. And so been doing it ever since. We do conventions. So I do double duty at conventions. Sometimes I'm half pirate, half author. Um, and we do sword demonstrations, we do education, we do yeah, and so we practice fencing on Sunday afternoons, and yeah,
Are
that's
there
how
any
I ended up
particular
there.
conventions you really like going to?
Uh yes. I author writers conference that I go to every year is, and that takes place that jumps around. Last year it was in Missouri. This year I think it's in, I don't know, I'll have to look, but it's up north. Sometimes it's East Coast because that's where the founders are. The 10th anniversary was, or fifth anniversary. One of them was in Reno, so it kind of bounces around. But it's a sci-fi fantasy writers conference. So that one, I'm just an author and editor. I'm not a pirate at that one. And then there's a number of local conventions that I go to. So the one where I met the pirate group is called CocoCon. And I am not sure what they're doing this year. After COVID, it kind of like they didn't, they've had a couple of conventions after COVID, but it's kind of like been less and less well populated. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing with them this year, but uh TuskCon, which is a similar, like it's in Tucson, but it's a sci-fi fantasy convention that's fairly author heavy. I like that one. Um, so yeah, there's a number of them that are around that we've done as a group, and
Yeah, I'm actually, that's the direction Authors Alcove is going to be going, is they're going to start putting on conventions. And actually, I think we'll be going out to Phoenix would probably be one of our first places just
oh,
because
awesome.
I'm in Arizona. So
Yes, yes, and it's not well. The Phoenix Library has for a couple years did a convention called Confusion.
Okay.
And then the Glendale Library does what is it called? LibCon. So those are a couple, and I know the people who run those. And I'm not sure if Confusion is happening this year. I know that they had a number of changes, and so I'm not sure what that looks like this year. But LibCon at the Glendale Library is in December, and that one is a lot of fun. That one's one where I do double duty as pirate and author. Um,
Nice.
so so if you want to talk to somebody who has put on a couple conventions and knows how those run, I can get you in touch with people. So
That would be awesome. Definitely. And one of the things that I want to do for you is I know you're also a freelance editor and you do
yes,
all forms. You do developmental editing, you do then you do copyline, and then you also do proofreading and all of in between.
yes.
So do you mind just sharing a little bit about your services and where
Yeah,
people can?
absolutely. Yeah, I work with a lot of indie authors. I always tell people the cool thing about the technology that we have is that anybody can put out a book. The bad thing about the technology that we have now is that anybody can put out a book. So like I always encourage authors to get professional editing, obviously because that's my pay. Uh, but also because you can tell the difference when somebody has put the effort in. Like even if you're a fantastic writer, there's still going to be things that you miss. And having that second pair of eyes that knows what to look for is hugely important. So it's not just beta readers who are likely to enjoy it just because they like to read. And it's not your mom who loves it because she's your mom. And it's not it's a different thing when somebody knows this, like the genre conventions and the story arc necessities and the character uh, templates. Even if you don't follow it exactly. Another thing I always say is that you can break any rule that you want, but you have to know why you're breaking it. You have to know the rule in order to break it. So if you want to break rules, by all means, go ahead. But you can tell when an author is breaking a rule on purpose for a specific point and whether they just don't know what they're doing. And so having somebody who knows to kind of help you through that is really important if you want your story to stand out amongst all of the books that are published every year. So
And your website I believe it's your name, is that correct?
yes, AvilyJerome.com.
Okay, I thought so. I was like trying to scroll down to see to make sure I wasn't leading people astray. One of the things that I also noticed is that you won, or no, you were a finalist for the Realm
Yes.
Awards for the breeding. What did that mean to you to learn that?
That was really exciting. So that's the contest that is put on by Realm Makers, which is the conference that I go to every year. And so like it, the conference itself is growing every year, and the contest is expanding every year. So winning a Realm Award is like a huge within that circle. That is a huge like notoriety thing. And so to have been a finalist was just like it's like okay, I really actually do know what I'm doing. It was like that validation that like, okay, I'm not the only one that likes this. My dad's not the only one that likes this. And like my dad is really my biggest fan. He buys my books and gives them to all his friends. Uh, um, but so it's not just my family members and the people that love me that are saying this is good. Like this is a legitimate, I really am writing something that people are enjoying. So that was exciting.
That is very exciting. I had not heard of them before I was looking up your information and all of that. So I was like, oh, I need to connect with them. As far as like, you know, I love writing fantasy. So, but many indie, and I wanted to also talk about a little bit about the marketing aspect because I actually came across your TikTok. I know you're not a huge TikTok, but you're at least getting out there and trying it, which is, I give you props for that. I've tried and then I've pulled back and I keep it's awkward. I was awkward
Yes,
at the
agreed.
beginning though too, as I'm trying to figure out the whole like going live. So everybody just needs to know I'm awkward. But so many indie authors, the biggest thing I hear them talk about is their struggle with marketing. What strategies have you worked and what strategies have you done that just fell flat?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that is really kind of depressing is that you have to be consistent. And I'm not good at being consistent. So, but I notice if I am posting regularly and if I am like feeding, I call it feeding the algorithm. So if I'm like just scrolling through TikTok and hitting like on things, watching the videos, commenting like that, that really does work. And I don't like it. I have too many other things to do than just sit and browse TikTok all day. But when I do invest a little bit of time, and that same goes for like Instagram and Facebook and everything else. Like you have to feed the algorithm, and then the more you do that, the more it rewards you with showing your stuff. And you have to be consistent. You have to post things on a regular basis, and you have to like and comment and view on a regular basis. So yeah, so that it works. It's just really hard to make it part. So I actually like put it in like my workflow that okay, I'm going to work on videos today. Like it's work. It's not. I don't do it for fun. Um, but I count it as work because it is a thing that works, and I have seen results when I have been consistent with posting regularly.
So,
Th
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say things that don't work. I'd have to think about that a little bit because it's hard to say whether it just didn't work or if or if that just happened to be a coincidence that my sales were lower that day. So yeah, I'd have to think about that. Oh, another thing that have found that I've gotten a lot of success from is free Booksy. So if you run a free book promotion on like Amazon and advertise on free Booksy. Like I've done that with the breeding, and I've gotten some pretty good follow through with people buying the other books. So that is a strategy that I have used quite a few times and has worked really well for me.
That is actually one that I have heard several other authors say that they have tried and it has been a success. So, are you able to do that even if you're not on Kindle, like if you're not on Kindle Unlimited?
Yes, you can still run a free book promotion.
Okay.
So you
I
you
was
just have to go into your settings and like all of mine are on Kindle Unlimited. Um, but yeah, you can run a free book promotion and it'll give you a certain number of days per quarter. So you just have to like go in and mess with the timeline and figure out, when my days are eligible. But
Yeah, with mine being middle grade, I'm considering not putting mine on Kindle Unlimited. If it was adult, I
yeah,
definitely would hands
yeah.
down. But like with
Middle graders don't really do ebooks.
yeah. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to do Kindle Unlimited for this particular series. But I noticed that you're active on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, possibly
Mhm.
others. What platform has been the most effective for engaging with your readers?
Uh, Honestly, probably TikTok. Um, also Instagram. Instagram's really good but it's mostly people that I'm already friends with.
Okay.
Um, so people that already follow me. TikTok has been the best for like getting new followers and people that I don't already know or connect with in other places. So, which again, I don't like TikTok. So it's
You
sad
get
for me that's.
Yeah, you gained a new follower, just so you know.
Thank you.
Not sure which account I did it. It might be my personal, it might be my author, it might be, I have like 5 different accounts that I've tried different businesses and stuff. And so I have no idea who subscribed, but it was
Cool.
me.
Awesome.
Um,
Thanks for following.
all right, so I have a question because you've written several books. How many books?
Hmm.
Oh,
Um, 14 total.
14. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is a fun question to ask you. Because if you were to have a real life dinner party, um, who are one or more of your characters who you would really like to attend, and which book are they in?
Hmm. Um, okay. I have a fantasy novella series. It's called the Amulet Saga. And I have like they're all separate stories within the same world, and they all like loosely connect, but they're like they can be read independently. But I have one crossover character that is in all of them, and her name is Ada, and she's like the little old lady that knows everything forever, and she's like the magic lady. And so I would love to have her around because she is just cool and she knows things. So I would definitely invite her. Possibly, well, probably Jack from the breeding. Jack is who I want to be when I grow up. Like she, she's snarky, she's funny, she's like cool, she says all the things that I wish I could say and can't. Um, like when it like especially moment like I'll think of these really wonderful comebacks 2 hours later but she comes up with them like right then, and I love that about her, so I definitely want her around.
I have
um
comebacks, but I'm not gutsy enough to say them, but they come to my mind. So
yeah, I replay the conversation hours later and stew over it, and then I'm like, oh, that's what I should have said. And then so sometimes Jack says those things to people.
nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So in my other like contemporary fantasy, Legends Untold, there's a character that he's not super nice in the first book, but like he's gonna grow.
Mhm.
And so his name is, what is his name? You know what? I renamed him like 100 times over the process of writing this book, and now I can't remember his name. But I actually like, hold on. I've got it.
I did that with a few of my characters. I changed their names. And so, yeah, like, but it's not none of the main characters. They're like usually side characters because my main characters, I've known their names since forever.
Yeah. He was definitely a side character, and Dr. Bryant is his name, I think.
Okay. All right. So I do want to ask one last question. Thank you so much for being on here. But I want to ask one last question. And it's a question I like to ask all writers, just because this is a writing podcast. And especially because you're a freelance editor, what is one piece of advice that you wish you would have known before you wrote your first book or published your first book?
I think I wish I would have known how long it's going to take. And like, because there's like, I look back at like the first manuscript that I submitted, and like I pulled it out one, what happened here? This is terrible. Um, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And so
Yeah.
I wish that I would have known that this is a process, and you're gonna learn a lot before you ever get to where you're ready to publish. Um, that first, like I've been writing since I was a child, and but that was my first, and it's a romance, which I don't do romance, so I don't know. Like I've grown since then. um, but so I look back at my writing and I'm just like, ee. And so like take it's a process, it's a journey. Take the time to read the craft books. Even if you don't use all the information in the craft books, take the time to read them. Take the time to join a critique group and get some feedback from other people who are in this, not just in the same place, but people who are ahead of you in the process. Take the time for somebody to take a look at it. Just it's not going to happen overnight. You're not gonna write a bestseller in your first attempt. Like, I mean, maybe you will, but probably not. That's like a lottery odds there. It's not going to happen. You have to put the work in, and it's going to take time.
I'm actually working on trying to find a good critique partner. I think with middle grade it's kind of harder because like majority of the fantasy writers I know are for older, and I
Yeah,
want somebody who is my middle grade, and I'm having trouble finding somebody that I think would be a good fit for a critique partner. But
yeah. That's a smaller pool,
yeah,
which middle grade is like huge. Middle graders are when they start really enjoying reading, and so I'd love to see more middle grade stuff coming out. So that's exciting. I'm glad you're doing it.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Avily. I really appreciate it. Again, I think your name is absolutely beautiful. I love the name
Thank
Avily. I'm
you.
like, Ooh. And I was telling her before that it reminds me of Avonlea, and I always thought that would be a really pretty name
Yes.
from Anne of Green
Yes.
Gables. But
I
anyway,
actually,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate being on here. It was lovely speaking with you. Thank you,
And I
everybody, for
also,
watching.
oh yeah, definitely. And I also want to thank my listeners for joining us today at Authors Alcove for Fantasy Writers. You're in, be sure to check out Avily's work, especially her novel, The Breeding, and follow her on social media for more writing tips and behind the scenes context. She has her website and she's on TikTok. If you are a writer and looking for resources, check out our free membership website at authorsalcove.com and check out our Patreon. And then please subscribe, rate, and review to help more fantasy writers discover our community. And again, Avily, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the
Thank
insight.
you. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Oh, and wrong side. Show the book. There's her book. All right, thank you. And if you can
All
just
right.
stay
Thank you.
on for
Yeah.
just a moment while I close this out. I always feel like the closing is